This year's NFL draft has 6 or 8 elite prospects. But with the Chicago Bears picking at 10, what would happen if all of them come off the board before Ryan Poles gets a chance to pick?
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for our Armada Player of the Week later in the show. On the show today, I want to prepare for the worst-case scenario in mock draft world where every player you were hoping falls to the Bears at 10 doesn't. And you're left looking around feeling not in love with the prospects that are there for you to choose. Well, then what? Then what do you do? Especially if a trade down isn't necessarily an option in this world. So we'll take a look at what those picks might look like and what would be left for the Bears. And the whole point of this exercise is not just to doom and gloom panic, but it's to realize that, hey, even in the worst case scenario, you're still going to be able to get a good player with the 10th overall pick, right? It just might not be the guy you really want or the guy you hope falls, but hey, it's not like there's no other good players in the draft. It's just like it's less exciting, and you kind of feel like, well, I could have got that same player later in the draft, but you take them at 10 and you can still be happy with that player coming here. And I wanted to make sure as we go through this, right, it's still realistic, right? So realistically, Cam Ward is going to be the number one pick to the Tennessee Titans. They're going to take a quarterback with that spot. We already basically know it's been all but confirmed, kind of like Caleb Williams was last year. So you could make an even more worst case scenario for the Bears that no quarterbacks go in the top 10, but we know that's not realistic, right? We know Cam Ward is going to be the number one overall pick. We do know that, there's a decent chance that more than one quarterback goes in the top 10, but that's less of a sure thing. And it's very possible that only Cam Ward is the only quarterback taken in the top 10, and that, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, etc., all fall out of the top 10 and are available when the Bears are on the clock, which, of course, could help a potential future trade-up situation. But I kind of want to go, okay, if we start with Cam Ward at 1, then what is the worst case scenario for the Bears? What arrangement of picks that's realistic that these teams would actually take because they could use that player and you're not just getting rid of players for the sake of putting them somewhere? What would this look like for the Bears? And then we'll look at kind of what's left and how we might approach it from there. So for me, Cam Ward has to be the number one overall pick, right? That one is already locked in stone. We don't know yet exactly what the Browns are going to do. There have been strong rumors of Abdul Carter. There have been strong rumors of Travis Hunter. There have been strong rumors of Shedeur Sanders. But let's say hypothetically in this scenario, we go Abdul Carter to the Browns and then Travis Hunter to the Giants. You could flip those two and go Hunter at 2 and Carter at 3. But if Shedeur Sanders is not being taken there, that's going to be your top 3 picks in some order. Ward at 1 and then Carter and Hunter at 2 or 3. It would be very surprising if anything other than that happens outside of the quarterbacks being in the conversation there. It's QB, it's Carter, or it's Hunter. The Browns and Giants are doing some combination of Carter, Hunter, and a quarterback. So we'll say no quarterbacks go in the top 10 here to make it a bad case scenario for the Bears. That's definitely realistic. Then you get to the Patriots at 4, and they can go in a lot of different directions here. We've talked about them as a draft wild card that can kind of throw the Bears' whole draft into just out of sync here, because the Patriots could go Genty, running back. They could go tight end, Tyler Warren. They could go offensive line. They could go defensive line. Let's say for this scenario, and it's not super important who goes to what team here, but let's say they go Will Campbell with the 4th overall pick, top offensive line prospect for them in the draft. Campbell goes 4. We're pretty much all expecting Mason Graham, the Michigan defensive lineman, likely to go to the Jaguars at 5. He kind of fits this sweet spot of best player available on the board at that point, and then also a team that has a need on especially the interior of that defensive line. They used the first round pick on Trayvon Walker a couple years ago and Josh Allen Hines a couple years before that. And yeah, they drafted Mason Smith from LSU on the defensive line last year, but they need some more strength and depth on the interior of that defensive line to generate more of a pass rush. It's been a weakness for them, and it's why that's perhaps the single most common mock draft pairing of Jaguars and Mason Graham outside of the top 3 for any team in the draft. Like, everyone sort of is penciling in that pick, even though I don't think we can assume that for sure. And we talked earlier this week about the possibility of Mason Graham potentially falling to the Bears. But nonetheless, we'll stick with the easy pickings here of the Jaguars and Mason Graham at 5. So we go Ward, Carter, Hunter, Campbell, Graham is your first 5 there. At 6, let's say the Raiders go Ashton Jeanty. They're a team that has been rumored to be interested in Jeanty. I know Albert Breer on Thursday said, kind of tried to, I don't want to downplay that possibility. He said he's not sure the Raiders are a team that's in a position right now from a team building perspective to take a running back that high. And yet I don't think we can put anything past Pete Carroll. They certainly have a lot of faith in Geno Smith there. So I don't think it's an automatic quarterback pick for the Raiders at 6 there. And their running back right now is 33-year-old Raheem Mostert. Like, they definitely have a pretty big need at running back. And you could make an argument for Jeanty being the best player available on the board at that spot. I mean, of course, the Raiders could go wide receiver. They could even potentially go offensive line. Like, there's a couple different areas, but let's just put Jeanty here for now. Then we go to the Jets at 7, who are kind of looking for a future, or a current and future starting right tackle replacement for them. They drafted Olu Fashanu in the first round last year, but now they're kind of looking for, they got a young guy they're trying to plug in at right tackle, but why not secure that for Justin Fields by taking somebody like Armand Membu from Missouri to just be their plug and play, like invest in the offensive line with another early pick there for him. I think can make a lot of sense for them. He's a top 10 caliber offensive tackle. Those players tend to go early in the draft. We just talked earlier this week about how tackles, the last 2 drafts in a row, we've had 4 tackles in the top 14 of the draft. It would not surprise me at all to see both go in the top 10, and in this case, both go in the top 7 of this draft. The Jets also could be a Tyler Warren team here after they let Tyler Conklin go in free agency at the tight end spot. All they've got there is Jeremy Ruckert, and they could use a tight end upgrade. But we'll put Membu here and then Tyler Warren to the Panthers at 8. Honestly, you could even potentially swap those and go Warren at 7 and then Membu at 8. But the Panthers are trying to build around Bryce Young. They've got a bunch of running backs already. They used a first-round pick on a wide receiver last year. They don't have a ton of talent at tight end. It's Jatavion Sanders and Tommy Tremble. Neither one has ever had 500 yards in a season in their career. I know they're still young, but you got to get weapons for your quarterback. They can go to multiple tight end sets and get a lot of use out of all of them. In the same way that we talk about the Bears as a Tyler Warren option, I think the Panthers are in a similar conversation there. And then the Saints at 9 is where I had the most trouble here in this nightmare mock draft. Because once you get through Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Ashton Jeanty, Armand Membu, and Tyler Warren, those are kind of the 8 players that are most premium Bears favorites there. You could kind of throw anybody for the Saints at 9. I don't know what the biggest nightmare, worst case scenario is. Is it? I put Kelvin Banks, the Texas offensive tackle, because I feel like he's the next best offensive lineman, and I think offensive linemen are going to go earlier than we think. The Saints could play him. They need a new left guard. They can move him inside to guard. They could move Fuaga to guard and play Banks at tackle. They've got some options there as to why they might take an offensive lineman there. I also considered a defensive end or like a pass rusher they could add there. Like we're kind of into the first of the second tier here for the Saints at 9. And you can see where I'm struggling to find a pick for the Saints. That's when you're starting to struggle to find a pick for the Bears here. If your running back, your tight end, your offensive tackles, your pass rushers, your top guys are all off the board, what does that leave for Ryan Poles to try and decide from? There's no one that you love, but maybe enough players that you like that you'll be happy with somebody. We'll take a look at what kind of options the Bears would have next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by the 2025 Nissan Armada. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. And each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy that we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push a team like the Chicago Bears forward as we look ahead to next season. And as we're talking about these guys not necessarily making it to the Bears at 9, you could find any of them to be our Armada caliber player that pushes the team forward, that has that heavy duty, rugged ability there. But I'll throw somebody like Will Campbell in as our Nissan Armada player of the week, because when I think of like conquering that road with capability and confidence, just being a really solid player all around, that is Will Campbell from LSU. Consistency, literal mechanics in this case, right? Someone who you know exactly what you're going to get, and it's reliable. It's a go-to option at all times, and it's a reason why it's going to be prioritized. Like somebody like Campbell is going to be prioritized high in this draft. It's clear that Will Campbell is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. So if we go through the first 9 picks of the draft, and Ashton Genty's gone, Tyler Warren's gone, Will Campbell's gone, Armand Membu is gone, of course, Mason Graham is gone, and the big 3 at the top, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, of course. Well, then what? Like, crap. Like any of the guys that you felt like were blue chip, top flight players, they're all gone. And, you can nitpick about exactly what team and where, but there's a real scenario that all of those players are all gone to some of the various teams, plus one more player to the Saints. In this case, I picked Kelvin Banks from Texas, but it could be just about anybody for the Saints. And I don't think it changes the math too much for the Chicago Bears. And so as you've been sitting at 10, watching all of your favorite players come off the board in quick succession, Campbell, Graham, Genty, Membu, Warren, back to back to back to back, I'm looking at my draft board if I'm Ryan Poles, and I'm like, well, it's a bunch of guys I have, mid to late first round grades on, maybe even lower than that, depending on, the individual player. And it's like, there's some talented players at positions you don't really need, or there's some positional players that you need that maybe you don't want to use the 10th overall pick on. I think if you take the Bears out of it and just say who is the highest, best player still on the board, it's probably Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker. But I really just don't see him as a scheme fit for Dennis Allen. He's way too small to hold up on the edge in this scheme. Dennis Allen likes bigger, stronger, larger defensive ends, but he doesn't quite have the same type of off-ball linebacker skills that I think someone like Dennis Allen would prioritize. And I think he could work as an off-ball linebacker in this defense, but are you going to take an off-ball linebacker, someone who's going to be on the bench behind Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards as a rookie with the 10th overall pick in the draft? Like, he can play the Sanborn role in base defense, but I just don't feel like Walker is a scheme fit. It doesn't feel like you're using his skill set to its maximum in the Bears defense. Like, this is a guy who you use in a multiple kind of scheme like the Patriots have done in the past, where you're 3-4, but you do some hybrid stuff so he can play some linebacker, he can play some defensive line, you can line him up as a jack of all trades, Anthony Barr type of player. And I just don't think this Dennis Allen defense has that kind of fluidity to it. He tends to be a rigid defensive coordinator who likes his guys who fit his scheme, and it's kind of a my way or the highway kind of defense. And Jalen Walker is more the highway than the my way in that case. You got the top defensive backs in the draft are still available then here, after this, quote unquote nightmare worst case scenario. You could get a corner like Will Johnson from Michigan, is viewed as the kind of the consensus number 1 defensive back. I also really like Jahdae Barron from Texas as a guy who has played outside corner, has played in the slot, and has played both safety positions. He's kind of a universal defensive back who you could play at almost any position on the back end of your defense. And I've kind of talked myself into and warmed up to the idea of him as a potential option in a case like this, right, where none of the top guys are there. Like, give me the versatile defensive back who, like Barron, could start as a rookie ahead of Tyreek Stevenson on the outside, and then in year 2 he could move to the slot if you don't re-sign Kyler Gordon, or he could move to safety if you don't re-sign Jaquan Brisker, or when Kevin Byard walks in free agency. Like, he's a guy who I think can do a lot of different things in your secondary, give you starting caliber play right away as a rookie, and then find a long-term fit somewhere, like figure it out later, draft him now, figure out exactly where he plays later on, I think he's got the ability to do that. Or if you just want a pure safety for the future, Malachi Starks of Georgia is kind of the top safety prospect in this draft class. And we talked on this podcast a couple weeks ago about how Dennis Allen's defense likes to use 3 safeties. He has a number, like a 30 safety package he uses a lot in passing situations, and a third safety can play a significant amount of time as a rookie here and then take over in the starting job, in year 2. But is that what you want to use your top 10 pick on? Like, you kind of want to get a guy in there who can have a significant instant impact and a significant long-term impact. Like for the 10th overall pick, you want short-term impact and long-term growth and sustainability there. So that's where it's like, are you making the most out of the pick by using it on a linebacker or a defensive back? Maybe, if they start at corner and are an upgrade over Tyreek Stevenson, but this is a defense that should be a better scheme fit for Stevenson, and you feel like you can still get a lot more out of him and don't need to instantly replace him and kind of give up on him by moving him to the bench this early in his career. So then, okay, if you don't take the really good defensive players, the DBs and linebacker there, then if you want to find a player that can be more of an instant impact, do you go pass rusher? All of the non-Abdul Carter pass rushers are still on the board here. But who do you pick? Is it Mykel Williams from Georgia? Is it Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M? Is it Mike Green from Marshall or James Pierce from Tennessee? Like, each guy has flaws and a lot to like, but none of them emerge as the perfect pick here. Like, Mykel Williams and Shamar Stewart both have had very low production over the course of their career. You wonder what the pass rushing upside is of Mykel Williams, because he just hasn't really had those major flashes. He's a really solid player, but is he ever going to be a 10-sack guy? Maybe not. And then are you happy with using a 10th overall pick on a pass rusher that may never be a 10-sack guy? It's a harder sell there. Whereas like Shamar Stewart also hasn't produced very many sacks in college, but missed a bunch of tackles and just couldn't finish the quarterback, but showed you the pass rushing ability there. And he's got more elite physical tools, but you got to mold him into a pass rusher. And he's got a lot higher bust potential than someone like Mykel Williams, who you feel like, man, right away, he's at least going to be a really solid player, even if he's never going to be special. So do you go the swing for the fences guy or the more solid high floor player? But neither one's really been that productive. So do you go to the more productive pass rushers? Like Mike Green, I think, led all of college football in sacks this past season, but it's at Marshall, a lower level of competition. We haven't seen him play great against higher levels of competition, and he has 2 on-the-record sexual assault accusations against him, one in college and one in high school. Like, there is off-field background work to do. He's not charged in either of those cases, and ultimately those investigations, one was anonymous, so it was never fully investigated. The other one was investigated, but no charges were filed. But nonetheless, like, this is multiple now. This is not just a one-time thing, like a multiple-time thing. You got to do your homework there before you feel really comfortable. Plus, he's not quite as big as what Dennis Allen tends to prefer on the defensive line. Same thing with James Pierce. Super productive player. A guy, I of these 4, he is my personal favorite. I would be comfortable taking James Pierce with a 10th overall pick because of how consistent of a pass rusher he is. He wins in a lot of different ways. He produces a pass rusher very similar to Abdul Carter. Like, he's the closest to Carter as a pass rusher for me in this draft, and I'd take that at 10, even though he is a little bit on the small side for what Dennis Allen likes. He also has rumors of immaturity question marks off the field that I can't speak to fully. I've heard they're overblown, but I don't know that to be a fact, and the Bears are going to have to do their homework and background check on him. Or is there another offensive lineman you want to go if Calvin Banks is off the board? Do you go Josh Simmons from Ohio State, left tackle, who could have been a top 10 pick had he not gotten hurt this past season? So you're drafting an injured offensive lineman. And we've seen what happens when the Bears draft injured offensive linemen. You have Amagaji last year. I think back to Gabe Karimi and Chris Williams of the years past. Like, I know, like, Simmons shouldn't be judged based on what happened with those guys, but at the same time, I'm always a little scared off by drafting an injured offensive tackle. So it's like, and how instantly can he plug into your lineup? Braxton Jones is also hurt. Like, so you got another injured offensive tackle. It's just like, this is not an easy process at all. And so it makes me wonder, like, does that put more of a priority on saying, maybe you should trade up from the 10th overall pick? Maybe you should make sure you get one of those top guys. If you start to see that run of all your favorite players coming off the board, does that dial up the pressure to go up and get one? We'll take a look at what that might look like and what the trade options even would be in a situation like this next on Locked On Bears. So obviously this is sort of hindsight thinking, right? Because if we go through the worst case mock draft, then all the players are gone, so we can't just go back in time and decide to trade up. But I think we can use this as sort of an exercise here. If we sort of rewind a little bit as these players are coming off of the board, like at what point, if you're Ryan Poles, do you feel that pressure to move up? Because you're not going to feel the pressure to move up into the top 5 necessarily, because even if, Will Campbell goes 4 to the Patriots, whoever the Patriots take, the Patriots are going to take one of the guys you want. The Bears and the Patriots have similar needs. They want offensive linemen, they want defensive linemen, they want running back, they want tight end. Like there's some similar, the Bears and Patriots are going to want the same kind of prospects. So generally the Patriots are going to take a guy that you like, and you're just going to have to live with that. So say whoever the Patriots take there, right? Whether it's Campbell or Genty or Warren or whoever, the Patriots are going to take one of your guys. The Jaguars, again, we're sort of assuming in pencil right now that Mason Graham is likely going to be their pick. And like this is all kind of expected at this point, right? Where it starts to get unexpected is like the Raiders, Jets, Panthers, and Saints. Those are teams that are less of a sure thing to take a player you want. And so how many players that you want do you let come off the board before you say, we got to go get one of them? Like if we lock in our top 5 here of Ward, Carter, Hunter, and let's say Campbell and Graham, just hypothetically here, if the Raiders go Genty and then you're stuck saying, God, I really want one of Membu or Warren, and there's 3 teams in my way, do I have to jump up to 7 there to make sure I can grab Membu or Warren? And like, do you want to trade up for Tyler Warren? Maybe that's the other conversation here. Are you trading up for a tight end? Like we talk about, there's already a debate of if Warren's at 10, is he worth taking at 10? Would you pull your hair out then if you're trading up to 8 to get Tyler Warren instead? Same thing with Genty, right? Okay, like say the Raiders don't take Genty, the Raiders go offensive line or quarterback there, and then the Jets go offensive line or tight end there, and you're like, well, man, Genty's falling, but and like Genty's the last one left. Like let's say the Raiders take Membu there, and then the Jets take Warren. Like we'll just bump them up 2 spots. So then you're at the Panthers at 8. They're not going to take Genty, but Genty's the last player you want, and the Saints stand in your way. And it's either, do you take the risk that the Saints are going to, like if the Saints take Genty, you're left with not a lot to like from the remaining list of players that we just went through. But do you move up 2 spots to get a running back? Because there's plenty of debate about whether he's worth the 10th overall pick. And how much do you trust that the Saints would or wouldn't take Ashton Genty in that scenario there? They have Alvin Kamara. They have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, I know he's kind of been a bust, but like they have running backs. They're not destined to take Genty, but they could. So what's your risk tolerance if you're Ryan Poles? Like if Genty goes 9 and then you're back to those other players, is that the end? Like, is that the end of the world? Do you need to get one of these top 8 type caliber players here? Like, do you need to get Membu or Campbell, or would you be happy with Kelvin Banks or Josh Simmons? Do you need to get a Genty caliber player or a Warren caliber player, or are you happy staying at 10, taking edge rusher Michael Williams or Shamar Stewart or Mike Green or James Pierce? Like, how Ryan Poles stacks the rest of the board is going to inform how desperate he gets to move up for one of these top guys. And to be clear, we don't even know that these 8 or whatever are top guys for him. Maybe they don't like Will Campbell at all, and he's not really even on the board for them, or they don't like Armand Membu, or they don't like Tyler Warren, and they're never going to consider a tight end there. I mean, we never really know, right? We sort of feel this consensus around those top 8-ish players. Warren's kind of on the borderline there, but like these 8-ish are kind of the consensus there. Do you have to have one of them? I mean, you're picking in the top 10. You want to get a top 10 blue caliber player. And if you can't get any of those guys, then you're picking a bunch of guys that you think are more like top 20, in the teens and 20s caliber players, but you're picking them at 10. So you feel like you're paying a premium for those guys. And so, of course, obviously, the best case scenario after this worst case start to the draft is trading down, that one of the teams picking after you will want to trade up for Jalen Walker from Georgia, or Will Johnson from Michigan, or Malachi Starks from Georgia, or Tedaroya McMillan from Arizona. Like one of the guys that you're maybe not that interested in, but you hope that another team is interested in enough to go up and get him. But this is going to be a draft where teams trading up, it's a buyer's market, right? There are going to be more teams looking to trade down than there are teams looking to trade up. And so when you do your draft trade chart, and try and predict what could the Bears get for their picks, like, I don't think they're not going to get as much as you might in a different year where there are more teams looking to move up than there are teams looking to move down. So it's going to be a tricky spot here. I do think ultimately it's like gun to my head, or I got to bet $1,000 or whatever on what happens for the Bears in this draft. I think Ryan Poles will want to trade down and will try to trade down. But I also think Ryan Poles will feel comfortable staying at 10 and taking one of these pass rushers. I think it's very easy to justify using a top 10 pick on a pass rusher and saying, this is the highest rated pass rusher we had on our board. And it's kind of like the idea of like when you're picking the number one pick quarterback, right? It's like, yes, there are 4 pass rushers here that we talked about, right? Micah Williams, Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, James Pierce, and you might have them graded similarly. But the important thing is that you get your choice of the 4. You're not left, like if you trade down, it's up to every other team to decide for you which one's going to fall to you. If you traded down to, say, the Seahawks at 18, it's a pretty big jump. And there's a decent chance that in those 8 picks you trade down, one or more of those pass rushers is going to come off the board. Maybe Williams and Stewart come off, and then you got to choose between Green and Pierce. And maybe you like Green and Pierce, but wouldn't you rather just get your first choice pass rusher? Like, instead of trading down and then hoping that your first choice is still there later on, just say, you know what, if you think this player is the best pass rusher in the draft, not named Abdul Carter, take him with the 10th overall pick. If you think this player is a future starting defensive end in your team that can potentially be a 10-sack guy, a guy with game-changing ability, maybe not a complete game changer, but like, if you think this is a pass rusher who you're going to give a second contract to that's going to be worth $20 million a year someday because you see him developing into that player, that's worth the 10th overall pick. Like, it's a little bit of a harder sell at other less premium positions, like a wide receiver or whatever. But like, it's kind of the same thing with like offensive line too. Like if it's a left tackle like Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks or whatever, like if you think this is a 10-year starter for you, then he's worth the 10th overall pick. And if you don't think he's a 10-year starter for you, then he's not. And it's that simple. So I'm like, unless you don't view any of these players as 10-year starters for you, then you're screwed. But I just got to get a feeling like if you got 4 different pass rushers to pick from here, you're telling me you're not going to like any of them enough to take 10th overall? Like, that to me, because there's such a volume of them at that spot, and it's because it's your choice of all the pass rushers, you get your number 1 choice. It's not like here, it's like if you took an offensive lineman here, it's sort of your number 3 choice because Campbell and Membu were already off the table, right? Or if you take, I guess that's offensive line's kind of the easiest example there. If you take another running back or another tight end, well, you're taking your number 2 choice because your number 1 choice was already off the board. And maybe, Abdul Carter is sort of your number 1 choice for pass rusher, but he was never realistic. But now you get your number 1 choice of all of these pass rushers. And that to me is where I feel like if I'm Ryan Poles, it's the smartest path forward after a pretty nightmare worst case scenario first 8 or 9 picks before you were on the board and before you drafted. That's what I kind of hope to see the Bears do in a situation like this. Get me a pass rusher. It's this combination of the biggest need still remaining on your roster, and also you kind of get the best pass rusher available situation there, where you're not just taking the sloppy seconds of other teams passed on these pass rushers already, so you don't really get your pick of the litter. We'll see what Ryan Poles does, though. How he has these players graded is going to be different than we do, and we can always be in for some surprises on draft day. We'll break down all those surprises for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're coming back tomorrow or on Monday and make Locked On Bears your first listen once again. Make sure you have a good weekend in between, because then we'll come back on Monday with another opportunity for you to bear down.